Hello friends, and welcome back to another Reading Journal wrap-up. July may have zipped right by, but it was an interesting month of reading, including 8 new books, several recommended reads, and I even hit one of my reading goals. Let's get into it and see where July took me. Let's start off strong at the reading goals page. This month I can check off the Read 40 Books goal. This is kind of a huge deal for me, as the last few years before I started this journal, I'd only been reading 40 to 50 books in the entire year. To hit that milestone in July is incredible. Next, on the Books to Read page, I'll make a little box next to Page Boy, a memoir, and mark it as read. That's one more down on my TBR list. Flipping the page, let's fill out the recommended read spread. I read 3 of my suggestions this month, which were the following. American Gods, which unfortunately was a DNF for me. I'm so sorry, Alana. The Lies of Locke Lamora, which I rated 5 out of 5 stars. Excellent suggestion, Brent. And finally, The Assassin's Apprentice, which I gave 3.5 out of 5 stars. Thanks so much, John and Adrian. I can't believe there are only 2 books left on the recommended list. Everyone's suggestions have definitely played a very fun role throughout the year so far, and I've read so many different and interesting books. Next, let's fill in my visual bookshelf with all the different books I read this month and color them in. This month's reads include the following: Page Boy, a memoir; Crown of Midnight; Assassin's Apprentice; The Queen; Bellman and Black; The Lies of Locke Lamora; American Gods, which won't get added because it was a DNF; and The End of the Alphabet. July was another big reading month, with 7 total books read, the majority of which were in audiobook format. There was a really good mix of genres and writing styles, and I was really glad that I got to try out several of my suggested reads this month. I'd call July a success overall. Seeing this little visual bookshelf expand every month brings me so much joy. Next, let's flip the page to the series tracker spread. Since I finished Crown of Midnight, I'm going to gray in 1 dot in the Throne of Glass series, and also add in the Farseer trilogy, coloring in the first dot. Lastly, I'll add in the Gentleman Bastard series, and color in the first dot. On the next page, I'm going to add American Gods by Neil Gaiman to the Not My Cup of Tea spread. I stuck with it until halfway through the book before I ultimately decided to DNF it. For a rating, I gave it 1 star out of 5. Let's next flip over to the 2025 book log and fill it in with all the books I mentioned earlier. The first book for July was Page Boy, a memoir by Elliot Page. This was a candid, raw memoir that made me feel all the feels. Reading about others' struggles and how they fight to overcome them can really put things in perspective sometimes, and I very much enjoy getting a glimpse into other people's lives. If you're a fan of Elliot's work, this book will be for you. I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. Next up was Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas. This is the second book in the Throne of Glass series, and I absolutely devoured this book. Although I enjoyed the first novel well enough, this one really grabbed my attention from the top and kept me very entertained. There were some great twists and turns, and the writing and plot in this book were much better than the first. I rated this 4.5 out of 5 stars. Up next was Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. This is an epic fantasy tale about a young boy named Fitz, who was born of royal blood, but not to royalty itself. Friendless and lonely, he's adopted into the royal family and learns the subtle art of the king's assassins, along with how to use an old magical art called the Wit. This book was interesting, but I admit that I did find it a bit dry and long-winded at times. There were long stretches where barely anything happened, and the assassin training felt minimal and almost an afterthought. I'm hoping the next book will be a little bit more fast-paced. I rated this one 3.5 out of 5 stars. My fourth book for the month was The Queen by Nick Cutter. I've got to admit, Nick Cutter is quickly becoming one of my favorite horror authors. This novel is about a girl named Margaret, who finds a mysterious package containing an iPhone on her front stoop, and the texts coming from the iPhone are from her friend Charity, who has been missing and presumed dead for the last month. What happens over the course of a single day is truly chilling and absolutely terrifying, and it had me on the edge of my seat the whole time. I keep thinking about this book even now, days and weeks after I've read it. For me, that's the mark of a great read. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Up next was Bellman in Black by Diane Setterfield. I had really high hopes for this one, as Setterfield's The 13th Tale is maybe my favorite book of all time, and Bellman in Black promised another spooky, gothic ghost story theme. Unfortunately, that theme didn't come through, and instead I was treated to a meandering novel about textiles, random people dying, how expensive funerals can be, and our main character, Bellman, who makes a bargain to save somebody who desperately loves, only to go on and, for all intents and purposes, ignore that loved one completely after the bargain is made. I was incredibly disappointed in this book, and I rated it a 2.5 out of 5 stars. My next read for the month was The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. This book was incredible, and I loved every moment of it. The best way to describe this book was if you mashed up Ocean's 11 and Snatch and added in a little bit of The Godfather and set it in a fantasy-based medieval Venice. It had comedy, it had action, and it had twists and turns that kept me second-guessing everything. I also really loved how the narrative would switch from present day to past times to help explain little plot points or Easter eggs within the story. It was an absolute delight to read, and I can't wait to read the next books in the series. I gave this a solid 5 out of 5 rating. Next up, I started American Gods by Neil Gaiman, but I ended up DNFing it. I stuck with it until about halfway through before I gave up. It was just too out there for me to enjoy. It felt very disjointed and kind of all over the place, and I was having a hard time tracking what was going on in the book. I also couldn't shake that the author was inserting some of his problematic and concerning ideals and thoughts within the novel, especially ones concerning cheating and sexual encounters. It really icked me out, and even though I was willing to separate the author from the work, this definitely contributed to me DNFing the book. I gave it 1 out of 5 stars. Lastly, I read The End of the Alphabet by C.S. Richardson. I picked this charming little book up at a used book sale recently, and only found out later that it was actually signed by the author. What a score! This novel is a story of a lasting romance, how things in your life can crumble quickly, and how love and devotion can keep things from spiraling out of control. This book was an absolute delight to read, and it was another novel that made me cry and feel all the big feelings. I rated this 5 out of 5 stars. Here you can see I'm trying something a little bit different with my spread. I wanted to see what it looked like to have the titles spread out every other line, and I kind of like it. I've got lots of room, so it's a good idea to try. Let's flip the page to my visual tracker and add all the books I just logged. As I mentioned last month, I thought I needed to add in another Dutch door style page here, as I'm reading far more books than I anticipated this year. So I made a page to insert between these two, and I'll add it in now for the future month's reads. Up next is the Book of the Month pick for July. This month I had to pick between The Lies of Locke Lamora and The End of the Alphabet, both excellent reads. Although I really enjoyed both books, I ended up choosing The Lies of Locke Lamora as my favorite for the month. It's really fascinating seeing these all together and the blend of genres that captured my interests over the months. Next, let's update the yearly stat spread and add in all this month's numbers and information. In books read per month, I'll fill it in with 7 books read, since one of my books was a DNF. For reading types, I read 2 physical books and 5 audiobooks. In books by the page, I read 2 books in the 1 to 200 plus pages column, 2 in the 300s, 2 in the 400s, and lastly, 1 in the 500s. For genres read this month, I'll add 3 in fantasy, 1 in horror, 1 in historical fiction, 1 in biography/memoir, and lastly, 1 in fiction. And finally, for when was it written, I'm going to add 1 in the 1995 column, 2 in the 2005 column, 2 in the 2010s, and finally 2 in the 2020s. Moving on, let's flip over to our monthly overview for July and add in all the details and info for the month. I'll add 7 in total books read and a respectable 2,497 in total pages read. Next up is the best and worst reads of the month. The best book this month, we just learned, went to The Lies of Locke Lamora, while the worst book for the month automatically went to American Gods since I DNF'd it. Otherwise, Bellman and Black would have claimed that title. Next, I'll add in all the books to the monthly book log with the date I finished the book, its page count, and its rating. I'll also add in American Gods and denote that it was a DNF. Lastly, I'll dot in my mini calendar up in the corner with the date I finished each book and the color that corresponds to its genre. One other thing I'm noticing about these monthly spreads is that I'm just not utilizing the monthly reflection spot I created. I definitely think I'm going to do something a bit different when it comes to these monthly spreads if I make another journal next year. But this is part of the learning process, and it's good to get a feel for what's working and what isn't. July was another very busy month, but my husband and I did end up watching one short series, so let's add that into the TV shows and series watch spread. On July 9th, we finished watching the documentary series Trainwrecked: Poop Cruise on Netflix. If you never want to go cruising, watch this one. I rated it 4 out of 5. Later in the month, we watched a movie too, so let's flip the page to the movies watch spread and fill out the details. We watched Happy Gilmore 2 on July 25th, and it was such a fun little nostalgic movie with so many Easter eggs and nods to the original film. We both really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And just like that, we finished our reading journal recap for July. It was a whirlwind month, but another great one in the books. Pun totally intended. As always, thank you for taking the time to join me on my reading journey and for watching my videos. If you want to continue to see more content from me, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to my channel, or even just leaving a comment. I always love hearing from you. Happy reading, and see you in the next video. Bye!